last class, can you believe it, of this class anyway. And I wanna call attention to, there's an extra thing on your homework that I just discovered, I think last week. You know how each lesson ends with a wrap-up? Well, this one ends with a wrap-up, but then a couple of pages later, there's an overall whole course kind of a wrap-up. Basically kind of asking, you know, what has struck you, what has stood out, that kind of thing. So that's a number 3 that we've added down there. So answer the questions for days 4 and 5, do the wrap-up for week 10, and then do the wrap-up for the entire course on pages 166. I thought it'd be very easy to miss that, you know, so. And review your finger signals for that. So. In fact, I think Jim gets into that in today's lecture, so I may stop it there and we'll review before she goes through them. All right, so after the terrible fiasco of the worship of the golden calf, Exodus ends on a very triumphant note. Over and over and over again it says, just as the Lord had commanded, just as the Lord had commanded. You have the feeling they were striving with all their might to get it right this time, you know. Okay. Was there anything that stood out to you? She asked that question number 1 on page 150. Either because it's repeated, or because it's new, or just for some other reason that stood out to you as you were going over this week's chapters.
I was looking at that little phrase of fire in the cloud.
Uh-huh.
I wonder how that works.
Yeah.
I didn't see it before or something. It's in the cloud.
Yeah, it sounds like it's in the cloud. I'm somewhere, and I don't know if it was here or if it's in Isaiah or someplace else where I was reading about this fire in the cloud. It talks about the fire within the cloud. And so, which makes sense. I mean, you think of the fire as the very presence of God.
It has to be maybe shielded.
Shielded,
As it
yeah.
was in a bush once, and now it's in a cloud.
Yeah. And a much larger thing. A bush probably wasn't that big of a fire, you know. But if you've got a pillar big enough to lead several million people, it's gotta be pretty big, you know, so. Yeah.
I like it always when it says the glory of the Lord fills the tabernacle, or it fills the temple, or it shakes, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Glory of God filling
Doing that.
a place.
Yeah, the power that's there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, this was kind of interesting. Question number 2, when Moses addresses the people and he brings down the laws for the second time, what one does he particularly address right off the bat? The Sabbath. Why do you think that is? Any ideas why that might be? Why pick that one out of all the others?
It's the holy day.
Well, it's the holy day, yep.
They're not used to Sabbath.
They're not used to Sabbaths. And think about this, what are they right now preparing to do? A lot of work, a lot of weaving, a lot of engraving, a lot of molding of this from metals, a lot of work by a lot of people. And he says, in the midst of all that, remember the Sabbath. Remember to take your rest. And Jim will talk about that more, but I think it's because what was facing them, they needed to be reminded of this because it wouldn't have come naturally to them. They didn't come out of a culture of rest. Came out of a culture of being slaves, or they weren't even given the option of rest. You know?
They were very strict about it. You can't lift something, you can't
Yeah.
cook.
Well, they said, don't even light a fire.
Fire.
Yeah,
They
don't
were
even
all-
light a fire. So, yeah. So anyway, how did the people respond when Moses said, okay, the Lord wants you to contribute some of your wealth that you brought out?
Generous.
They were generous, over the top generous. stop, you know, it makes me think, what's that Walt Disney movie where the things just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, it's an oldie,
Yeah,
what is that?
oh, the chocolates?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, Charlie,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
chocolate factory.
No, not that one, it's cartoon characters, and,
Or
oh,
Lucy,
what is, huh?
or Lucy.
Are
Yeah.
they on the assembly line?
Well, they're not on an assembly line, but it's sort of like, it's like a magic thing, and it just, you know, somebody wants something, and it just keeps coming and keeps coming, it's like, oh, you know, I can't get away from this. Did he have one called The Sorcerer's Apprentice or something? Okay, I think it's that one.
Oh, Mickey.
Mickey Mouse, yeah. I remember it was a cartoon, but it was just like this kind of thing. Tell the people to stop. We can't even work now. There's so much stuff that they're piling in. But that's neat. And as you went through and underlined or circled or whatever you did, all those alls and everyone's and each person, and you know, it was amazing to see. This was throughout the whole camp. And something else that I underlined was whose heart stirred him, whose spirit moved him, who were of a willing heart, whose heart stirred them, whose heart moved them. This was a heart thing. Their whole attitude had changed. I think they were grateful because they knew they could have been consumed by that fire. God had every right. He took 3,000 of them, but he spared several million of them. And I think just all, you know, God is patient with us, and he did not consume us, and just pouring out their stuff. It would have been a wonderful thing to be part of and to see, and I kind of feel like here we are, filling this box, because I'll have to maybe save some of that for next time, you know, but that's okay. So let's go on into page 152. We were introduced to this Bezalel and Holiab. There's these special two workers. What was the source of their skill?
The Lord.
The Spirit of God, the Lord himself, Holy Spirit. What was the range of their skill?
Very, very wide. I mean, there were people that did
Right.
so many different
It
things.
sounds like these two particular guys could do everything,
Mhm.
which you need. If you're gonna be the foreman of this vast project, you need to know something about each part of it. They could do it all. Now, they obviously needed, they couldn't literally do it all, it'd take them years. So they had to have other people. But yeah, but they knew about all of those things that needed to be done.
They had
And-
to be good teachers.
Exactly, and that was the third one, their ability to train and lead others. They had to be,
Inspiration.
yeah, that God gave them not only the ability to do it themselves, but also the ability to show other people how to do it. And so that was really great. God just totally equipped. They were the total package because God is the equipper,
Mhm.
you know?
And they could do everything, but what was I gonna say?
I don't have time to do it all.
It's nice to have someone showing you how to do something when they know how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
It's not one of those do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
thing.
Right.
Examples.
Yeah,
There's some people that don't know how to teach, but they know.
exactly.
Then
They're
just
very
like-
skilled in what they do, but
Show
they
you when
can't
you're going.
really make it
I
clear.
don't know what you just
Yeah,
said.
So just to think that God has given them all of these things just when they're needed, you know? So, yeah,
My sister and I were talking to your husband yesterday before
Yeah.
we came to sit down, and he was saying how he taught,
uh-huh.
that he would read
Mhm.
or watch a video, whatever, and then he would literally take the motorcycle apart and show people how to do it, you know, instead of just, you know, I had bosses before that would say, yeah, do that, the book's there.
Uh-huh.
When computers first came out, that's how old I am, pre-computer. And I remember got a big box of Novell directory,
Mhm.
and my boss says, just get that ready because they're gonna, you know, you gotta install the network, and I'm going to install a network when I barely know a typewriter, let alone
What's a
a
network?
computer.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of boss I had, you know, he didn't wanna do it, so it was just do it.
Okay,
And that's very frustrating.
it is. But God did not give them
No.
frustrating
No.
bosses.
Mhm.
He gave them people that could give them exactly what they needed. And then they could take pride and have a feeling of accomplishment in what their contribution was. And feel like, I know it's right. They showed me, they showed me the right way to do it. And say, hey, wow, it would have been a wonderful thing to be part of. You know. Makes me glad that we're part of this church, because I feel like that about the people that are here. So many different kinds of skills and abilities and gifts. But may God guard that and protect it. You know, it's a precious gift that we have. The application question, based on those skills and materials required to construct the tabernacle, how do you think, or what would you say that God feels about art and artistry?
He cherishes.
He's an artist.
He's an artist.
Yes.
And he
Look
made
what
the
he
food,
created. Yeah.
they weren't just good to eat, they were beautiful to look at, as well as good to eat.
Detail is important to him.
Yeah. Detail is important. Do you think that the modern church tries to use the gifts of artists in contrary ways?
I think we take pride in our church, when you're doing it to the glory of God, it means so much more than if you're just slapping some paint on the wall because you gotta do the bedroom again or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see the pictures of how they say that it looked, just the embroidery alone, the tapestries, it's, I used to embroider, I couldn't do that to save my life. The people were very talented and they did it because they loved the Lord and wanted to make it beautiful.
But I think sometimes it goes the other way, where they put so much into the beauty, they're not doing it for the right reason.
Always it comes back to the heart. What is your intent? And I have been to churches that are not beautiful, and it's not fun in one sense. My husband and I were in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 6 weeks at one point, getting some special training in adult literacy. And since we were going to be there for 6 weeks, we were looking for a church to attend, and we found one. People were very warm and welcoming, and we really enjoyed going to the services. But the building itself, it looked like a warehouse. It was in a warehouse district, probably had been a warehouse. So I mean, it was just, you didn't feel like you were going to church until you got inside. The people made it seem like you were going to church. But I missed the beauty. And in Bangladesh, the church we attended for one thing, cities in Bangladesh are kind of dismal looking because it's a tropical country and everything molds. I mean, the cement walls, everything looks like it's 1,000 years old because of the mold and grime. And then the church that we attended was in an industrial part of town again. And so I never liked the drive there. It was just kind of depressing. So I like coming to a pretty church. But again, it all comes back to the heart. What's our motive? We care about the color. We care about the color of the carpet we chose, for the auditorium. We have pretty paintings hanging on the walls here. We want our place to look nice. But again,
One of the most striking things I thought about this church when we moved out to Fowlerville and going up in the stained glass. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I was raised in the inner city of Detroit, and I went to a church that had stained glass stained glass from the first floor up to the second floor, just huge stained glass. And talk about a church looking dismal in the riots. They just smashed all the stained glass, took what they could, and I mean, they ravished the church. And the altar, they had a huge altar, and it was it was very ornate, it was from Germany and it had all the spiders and, you know, it was
Mhm.
absolutely gorgeous. But they destroyed the church, and so that was very depressing, but I love stained glass, I grew up with it, and then when I saw this, I thought, gotta go there.
It's unique.
It's neat, the things that God uses to draw us and to keep us, you know.
But the tabernacle was made for the glory of the Lord,
Exactly,
for him to be in.
right, right.
Do we think about that with our churches? Is it for us to be in?
Well, that's,
Or for God to be
Yeah.
with us and He's here?
So again, like I say, it all comes back, it's a matter of the heart and the intent. But it's nice that we can find beauty where we can,
Yes.
you know, and create it where we can. Okay, then we get to day 2, she says, as you look back at the instructions that God gave just to Moses, and now you hear the account of them actually doing it, what did you notice about the 2 accounts? Any differences?
Are there more details?
Pretty much they're
There's a
the
couple
same,
things in
they're,
Yeah.
the only thing that changed maybe was the order, because when you're actually building something, you have to do certain things first. But if you look at what they were told to do and then what they actually did do, it said do this, they did this. And then just to nail it down, just as the Lord had commanded. So I mean, yeah, pretty much the same. How about would you say that the construction of the tabernacle, is it a project requiring a grand focus or a minute one? And why do you think, what do you think?
Well, you can't do the little stuff if you don't take what it's going to be and the big stuff that you're putting it into. You've gotta know the little parts and how they connect and what goes where.
Exactly, you've gotta understand the big picture, but you have to get all the details exactly right, you know? And God gave very, very detailed, yeah, so both. And what does that tell you about God? He is the God of the big picture, but he's also the God of the specific details, both in a tabernacle and I think in our lives. He knows the grand scheme, the overall arc of our lives, but he also knows the details. He knows what we're facing this minute and the next minute and what we need, you know, so it's great that he knows both. He's that kind of God. And that brings us to day 3, when you got to figure out how much gold and how much silver. I'll tell you what my total was, and you can see if we were anywhere in the same ballpark. For the total amount of gold collected, I had 2,193 pounds rounded off. And the silver was 3,544 pounds. So that gave over $62 million worth just of gold and $2,776,192 worth of silver. I mean, this was no cheap thing. So why do you think God required such an extravagant amount of wealth? What was he saying about the value of it?
I think we have to dig that deep to come up with that kind of money. You really wanna do it. It's not just grumbling for the whole thing, it's you doing it as an act of contrition or whatever. You're giving to the Lord.
Okay, that would be from the people's view. What does it say about God's view? Because he's the one that required it. Remember?
he also provided it.
He also provided it, yep. He made sure they had it if he asked them to give it. Certainly it says, he's saying this is important. You know, if you put this much value into it, it is vastly important. And then the last thing she had us do was look up all these verses about other things that God says are of tremendous value. And what was that? This is question 17.
Wisdom?
Wisdom and understanding. cannot be bought for gold or silver, it cannot be weighed out its price. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. How much better to get wisdom than gold, understanding to be chosen rather than silver. There's gold and costly stones in abundance, but the lips of knowledge are a precious jewel. So, God has given, we may not have a lot of money, maybe we do have a lot of money, but we can all be wealthy in what God wants us to be, and we can grow in the grace and the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and that's why we're here, really, so we can do that. Anything else that stood out before we go to the lecture?
I think that God is just worthy of our very best.
Yeah.
Our effort, sometimes we can be half-hearted
Mm-hmm.
and just think that'll do.
Mm-hmm.
We got a choir teacher that said, holy shoddy is still shoddy.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta do it up
Mm-hmm.
the best you can.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it comes with purchasing things too,
Mhm.
church.
Mm-hmm.
The talent involved, like with the embroidery, it was just majestic, though, and those were people that never embroidered before, they didn't even have a clue as to, I know if I was there, they'd do, yeah, that's the one Pam did. It would stick out real clear, so. The time and effort to do that kind of work, I mean, I thought it was hard to crochet. What they did was so much more than that.
Yeah. Okay, so last week we looked a little bit about how the Chinese symbols, the ancient symbols, use the same one for mountain and fire, and we looked at some scriptures on that. Well, as I was going through that, there was something else that stood out to me, and so we'll come back to those things. What stood out to me this time was the river. The river. You're probably very familiar with this passage from Revelation chapter 22. It says, then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. And also on either side of the river, the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. So here we're talking about the New Jerusalem is going to have this river just flowing out of it. And compare this with what it said about the Garden of Eden. A river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and there it divided and became 4 rivers. You don't get the idea this is some little stream. This is some vast thing like the Amazon, but anyway, the authors of the book, God's Promise to the Chinese, makes this connection between God's mountain and the river that flows from his throne when speaking about the ancient pictograph that can be used for garden or field or Garden of Eden. It's that little square thing with it, kind of an X in the middle of it. At first glance, that pictograph appears to be a well-irrigated field. But in light of the Hebrew description that there was a river that divided into 4 rivers flowing out of Eden to water the garden, we may have another concept. According to this pictograph, the river originated in the very center with streams flowing in 4 directions. Well, to have that force of flow, its source must have been elevated, like on a mountain. I know they've traced the source of the Amazon, and it originates in mountains, and then gradually streams flow into it, and more streams until it becomes this incredibly vast thing. So it makes sense. I mean, we're not told that specifically in Scripture, but when you think about these pictographs would have come down from oral traditions to people that, had come from the Tower of Babel, that would have known all of these, would have heard all the creation account and the flood and all of that. It kind of makes sense that it probably did have its source in a mountain, especially when we hear in various places of Scripture, the mountain of the house of the Lord. It's just kind of an interesting thing how these ideas come together and kind of connect. Last of all, here's another place, this is in the Psalms, that kind of ties all of this together. Your righteousness is like the mountains of God. Your judgments are like the great deep, man and beast you save, O Lord. How precious is your steadfast love, O God. The children of mankind take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house. Good old tree of life that has 12 crops and one each month, fresh fruit. There's an abundance. We feast on it. You give them drink from the river of your delights, for with you is the fountain of life, and in your light breathes delight. I just find it fascinating how ideas tie together throughout all scripture and give you more of a. I always thought of the Garden of Eden as flat. I don't know why. Now I think of it as sort of like the Appalachians, green mountains, you know, that are lush all the way to the top. You know, not covered with ice and snow, but covered with lush greenery. It's just fascinating to think about. So, you know, someday we're going to see it.
Amen.
But it gives us something more to look forward to, just how awesome is our God.